This is Changeling the Podcast.
Welcome to Changeling the Podcast. Come for the glamour, stay for the vibes. I'm your host, Josh, and with this is your host, Puka. Say hi, Puka.
Whisper, whisper, mutter, snarl.
What are we talking about today, Puka?
We are diving further into the dreaming than, well, maybe not than we've ever gone before, but into a different aspect of it as we explore denizens therein, in the honest denizens of the dreaming.
This is another art house book written by Christopher Howard with Tad McDivitt. Not entirely sure what the with means in this, but
Honorary?
maybe we'd have to.
It says assisting author as well in the acknowledgements.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, Christopher Howard, we see a bunch.
yeah.
Or Todd? I don't know. I can't tell.
I think Tad.
Tad. Okay, yeah. Okay.
Whoever laid out the credits typoed it.
Okay, that makes more sense. Yeah. Todd's written several RPG books. The only World of Darkness one I really found besides this one was tradition book Hollow Ones, which is a different sort of controversy by them not being a tradition. But
it's also a special thanks to Dan Ginn, and I'm like, Dan Ginn from the forums?
Oh, yeah!
Back in the day.
I remember.
Those were the days.
Yep.
It also says copyright 1999, but then in the introduction it talks about how this was released in 2000. So, what is time?
So, yeah, do you want to dive in?
Let's. So we open with a short story, Koraksara Twilight, in which a Firbolg warlord celebrates a victory over the recently reborn Naraka with his lady friend and court. Then they capture a Karamet, and a visiting Moray stops by. All of these are the new varieties of Fae we'll be encountering within the book. So,
Yeah, it's interesting. This introduction's like, it was actually readable for things that are supposed to be looking like they're handwritten.
yeah.
I did take a banality check when they switched to two column layout for no reason partway. But anyway, that's
how it goes in the 20th edition sometimes too, I think. Like when you open the chapter, it's single column, and then as you go through the main body pages, it turns into two columns, so you can get these side column art pieces.
But it's supposed to be, it's like looking like it's got this like burned parchment thing going on with the handwriting, and then like they switched to two column layout in your burned parchment with the. Anyway, it was weird. It was a bit jarring for me. But
in media studies, we call that hypermediacy. Yeah, there are references in here as well to the Triumph Cask of Sorrows, which was a MacGuffin that never fully materialized in the metaplot. There was also an Easter egg with the mention of Asterlan from the Nobles the Shining Host short fiction.
So, yeah, there's a lot of references to other things that game.
Yeah, this whole book. We've talked before about the Chris Howard metaplot, and this is like the culmination.
Well, it wasn't the culmination; it was a major
the pinnacle,
piece.
the apex.
Yeah. It's the apexes we got.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm here for it.
Yep.
I don't know that I'd want to read a whole novel in this writing style and tone, but short fiction, it's fine, and I like that it lays out those various darkkin.
Yeah, and they definitely are dark.
Yeah.
Brutal what they're doing. But
it's also nice to have the reminder that there are societies of garden variety kiths in the dreaming and the what are they called? The home fields? The fields before, that's it.
Well, and the fields behind.
Yes, yeah. All those fields.
And other places. But we'll get more into the dreaming.
Yeah. It's interesting because I would even call this book a sequel to Dreams and Nightmares in a lot of ways. And we're going to see a lot of that.
Although it's kind of like, I know most of our listeners are, almost all of them using C20. It's kind of funny how like the things in here, it's like get reset back to Dreams and Nightmares by C20.
Yeah.
Yeah, we get more Melissa Run art.
Yes, which looks much better when fully inked. Then we have the introduction. It reads to me in this introduction like the writing was very much on the wall about the end of the line coming up. Even if they couldn't say it outright, I feel like there are little hints kind of in the text. But we're repeatedly told how much darker and deadlier the world is now for the Fae, supported by the prelude info. So this ties into the Week of Nightmares metaplot thing that had been going on for several months at this point. And the connection they give for Changeling here is that the death of Ravnos shook loose the chains that bound the Red Court in the dreaming.
Well, there was a bunch of things. Like, yeah, there was the nightmares part and the spirit nuke. The one kind of spirit nukes, not the other type of spirit nukes that they also reference in.
Yeah.
Do we have to do Time of Thin Blood as like, or whatever book had that?
I don't think we do, no.
Okay.
I mean, it goes into it enough in chapter 1 here. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the excuse for saying, oh yeah, the Trods all kind of burst open again, but it's Dark Fae this time.
Mm-hmm.
We're told that the Denizens are varieties of Fae that never underwent the Changeling way, but are as full-fledged kiths as the Kithain. Many of them served the Fomorians in the War of the Trees.
Yep.
So yeah, that's what the book's about. I think it'll be pretty clear whether it fulfills that goal.
Yeah, we get a lexicon that's like, I'm two minds about. Some of it's, handy, and some of it's like, you're just renaming things we already had words for.
Yeah. I did kind of like some of the... I liked Meridianus and Miririm.
Tenebros realms.
Yeah. Tesseraconta, which is just the Greek word for 40.
But that's also the War of Trees.
Yeah. Adhene.
Yeah, I don't write adhene a lot because I don't remember how to spell it.
Oh, the introduction is also where we get the first mentions of 2 of the several sort of lost kiths in this book.
Mm-hmm.
So we're given 7 splats later on, but then they kind of mention several others throughout. So they talk about the spidery Aslinthi and the troll-like Lords of the Mound, who were 2 types of denizen.
Now, the Lords of the Mound have supposed to have all died out, so it makes sense we don't get them. I am a little bit annoyed that we don't get the spider-like Aslinthi in this book, because it's like, you're using them, you don't give me even enough to use them as an NPC, but okay.
Perhaps we'll mention...
Harbingers of Winter.
Yes. So chapter 1.
Yeah. Things fall apart.
Yeah. Good on them for including like that whole stanza of the Yeats poem.
This goes through the history of the Darkkin. This is another take on the War of Fomorians versus Tuatha De Danann and like all of them, I think you have to treat this as like another narrative that like some people believe in character, not a...
Yeah. It's almost biblical in a sense. Like it's very, in the beginning there was darkness kind of stuff. And they talk about Fimbulwinter, which, if I remember my Norse myth correctly, is like the winter that comes after Ragnarok. So I don't know if the implication is like a cycle here. Like, yeah, it's endless winter. It's at the beginning and the end. But meh.
Yep.
When the Fomorians ruled as these colossal monstrosities and the Firbolg, the eldest of their servants. I really like the Firbolg as the she analog that kind of goes through here. So, yeah. The book also kind of points to the important thing is balance. Like, there always has to be some dark and there always has to be some light, which I think is an interesting thing to call out. The rest of this early section basically just explores that metaphysical relationship between humanity's dreams and the shapes of the Fae, which we've kind of seen hinted before, and it's a little more explicitly spelled out here. Like, they talk about Boggins and Fua coming from the dreams of hearth and home, Naraka and Atrai being corrupted into demons, so that give and take relationship between the dreaming and the autumn world.
Yep.
At some point they also call the autumn world the source of all things or whatever, and I'm like, oh, awesome.
But yeah, it does have a very Hobbesian view of things, like even more so than you get in World just how brutal and nasty things were. But that's for at least, well, we get into some of the confusion about Darkkin and stuff where they talk about these are the equivalent to Fomorians, what the Kithain are, the Tuatha De Danann. Quite a few of the kiths aren't, but anyway, we'll get to that. This is definitely not they were created by the Fomorians or created by the Tuatha. They're different Fae that happen to pick a political side.
Yeah.
And I think we even hint, I can't remember it's here or somewhere else, hint that there were actually some red caps that chose the Fomorian banner, and there was...
Yeah.
So it wasn't even like entire kiths. But, and they also do have the whole cycle, Celtic cycle, like the Firbolg were there before the Fomorians showed up.
So then we get the Sundering, another perspective on the Sundering. In this case, the prodigals get some of the blame for disentangling the human world from the Fae world, but also like the 2 camps of the Tuatha and the Fomorians, quite separate from Seelie and Unseelie, it points out, being split over how to deal with humanity. I was a little confused by the Tuatha and Changeling opinion where they say they want to stay the course in the waking world, but then they talk about how the Tuatha wanted to follow what they call the fading path, which is like the very Tolkien elf slow fade away into the west kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, but did the changelings want that? Like, it's an interesting thing to think about. Before the shattering, before they didn't have a choice and they had to stay on Earth, did the Fae living primarily on Earth think like, oh, eventually I'll let myself fade into the dreaming again?
Yeah. The I think of it as what they were going for here is the Twaha are the she's she.
Yeah.
So you have what happened with the shattering, but the sunderings where the Twaha did that. So I guess maybe we'll have another resurgence. Actually, that makes
Yeah,
it
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Maybe when the Fomorians finally wake up, the Tuatha will return. See, Time
Yeah.
of Judgment, chapter whatever.
Yeah. And I get a little bit confused about all these fights
Yeah.
between who was around when for what.
And then we get into the War of the Trees, and it gets even more confusing.
Mm-hmm. The shattering came early for the Darkkin. I'm like, what does that mean? Like,
I guess the sense that for them, they were bound into the dreaming. So, yeah, spoiler, the Tuatha win the War of the Trees, imprison the Fomorians. We've talked about this before. And as part of that, they created the Silver Path, which is
mm-hmm,
also called the Silver Band for the Darkkin because they can't walk on trods or go through gates that are protected by the Silver
mm-hmm,
Path. They're the things that lurk off the path in the darkness, the tenebrous realms.
yep,
So for them, it was almost like an exile, an enforced shattering, even though the autumn world and the dreaming were still contacting each other in a large way at that point.
they
They
couldn't.
were forbidden. Yeah.
Yep.
They were fully sundered while the rest of the world was still slowly going
Mm-hmm.
through it. And the period since then they called the Miririm, which I don't know what that's from, but I like it. And once the Fomorians were imprisoned, they used the word adhene to refer to the different kiths of the Darkkin. I'm just going to say kiths, probably, even if they don't like it. So
Mm-hmm.
the different kiths kind of went their own way, established their little kingdoms in the dreaming, etc. And that, I guess, brings us to the shattering.
Yeah. One thing here, like, is there any mention of any Galen besides? Like, this book does talk about Thalion at one point. There are the Adhene. There's the Kithain. It's like that's all of them. Oh, and there's in anime, but there's no like,
Selkies or Nunyihi or Xian.
yeah, or any. Yeah, it's kind of interesting.
Yeah. In the introduction, there's reference to other books that helped with the creation of this one, and it's Changeling Second Edition, Nobles the Shining Host, Book of Houses 2, Inanime, Dreams and Nightmares, Time of Thin Blood. And I'm wondering if it's only from those books. Because
Mm-hmm.
I could see this as the product of the material in there, none of which have those other Galeen.
Yep.
So perhaps. Anyway, we get up to the shattering. There were some of the kiths that were not banned from Earth. So the Moray, who are the Fates,
Mm-hmm.
and the Karamet, who are dead, and we'll get to that later. And then conflictingly, the Aunids, the Muses, because in some parts
Yeah.
as they were and they
That
weren't.
yeah, that's one thing. Like, I do like lots of this book, but I do have
Mm.
lots of criticisms too. And there's sort of two kinds of criticisms. There's like how this book fits into the rest of Changeling,
Mm.
and there's how this book's a little bit internally inconsistent in terms of.
Yeah.
And that's one of them. They're like, okay, here's the Dark King. They serve the Fomorians, except for almost half of them that we're listing.
Ordinarily, I would say, oh, it's inexcusable. But since there were two authors who had
Yeah,
uncertain relationships to the material, I'm going to give it a pass and
yeah,
come down on the side of the one that makes the most sense.
yeah. I'm not trying to blame anybody. I'm just saying like
Yeah.
how it fits. What I'm really getting into is like there are things you would have to rewrite sort of this
Yeah,
to
yeah,
use
yeah.
it.
But that's also true for a lot of.
Yeah, but the way you have to do it, the internal inconsistency is it was just sort of a weird. It felt like there was an outline, and then they continued in the book, and they didn't update things. Yeah,
Again, welcome to Changeling the
yep,
Dreaming. So the shattering, even though it slammed shut the gates, there are notes about how the Atrai were able to kind of pop through during the plague. So there are these Tararoms, which are little eruptions of dark glamour,
mm-hmm.
where Darkkin through the ages have been able to surf their way into the Autumn world. And especially as banality weakened the Silver Path in the Interregnum, they became more of a threat in the dreaming, so that when the Shi returned during the resurgence, they were lurking there to attack. These are like the fell beasts that we
Yeah.
talked about with House Balor.
It's kind of funny, even though the big sort of event in July 1999 was retconned in C20. It's like this concept still showed up in C20 of the evanescence and stuff, and like how there were previous ones. So it's like that is here still. So
Yeah. Putting aside whether or not the evanescence as presented in C20 is a better metaplot option, perhaps we can very briefly summarize the Time of Thin Blood, Week of Nightmares stuff that's referred to here.
Yep.
Okay, so for anyone who hasn't played Vampire, there's a clan called the Ravnos. There's lots of problems with them, but one of their elements that's less problematic is that they have a power called chemistry, where they can create illusions. Changeling later on said that this was the result of an ancient progenitor of their line making a bargain with the Fae to gain the power to bring extrusions of the dreaming into the world.
Yeah, and even crossover rules have chemistry kind of like manipulating chimera and making mortals be able to perceive them as illusions, essentially.
Yeah. So in the revised edition of Vampire, they introduced this metaplot element where the founder of the Ravnos, their antediluvian, woke from his millennia-old sleep, very hungry, very angry, and laying waste across a large swath of South Asia. He was destroyed by a coalition of various supernatural types, and with his death, a number of things happened. First, his entire bloodline went nuts for a few days and all ate each other.
Well, it's the Week of Nightmares from all that.
It was the Week of Nightmares for the entire world. The hunters arrived in the middle of that. But perhaps most importantly for the content of this book, his death was in part due to technocratic nuclear devices that were detonated, which apparently set off a massive firestorm through the dreaming.
Which is separate from around the same time of an entirely different nuclear device, which is referenced in this book. Nuclear devices set up in the underworld, which ravaged the underworld even worse. So those are unrelated nuclear devices that destroyed various spirit worlds.
Yeah. In any case, it scorched the dreaming, it scorched some of the denizens who lived there, and allowed a number of them to flood back towards Earth as it opened those dark paths, or whatever they're called. Twilight roads, that's it. I really like the line in here where it says, humanity lies before the returning Fae in all its neon splendor, and they're like moths to the flame being drawn back. So that's the short but dense history of the Darkkin that we get.
Chapter 2, The Winds of Change.
With some ice-cold fiction at the start. This is the geography chapter.
Yes, this is the geography of the dreaming. This is highlighting, and yes, if you were to try to use this book, even with C20, but definitely without C20, you would need a copy of Dreams and Nightmares. Also, would not make much sense at all.
Yeah.
Because it heavily lakes on various parts of the dreaming. And just talks to earlier mentioned Tenebrous Realms, which are the bits you can't get to by the Silver Path, and that's why the denizens live there, or at least the ones who don't handle the Silver Path. And it says there's different kinds of trods, not protected by something called the Twilight Road. Some Twilight Roads are paths of Baelor, but there's other kinds too that aren't really described.
And there are very few in the near dreaming, very few unsilvered roads.
So I bet there were some in Bangladesh before.
Yes.
Oh, yes, there's some in the near dreaming that go to deeper, but not.
Yeah, but very few that go to Earth. The paths of Balor we've seen before, but just a brief review. There are the black ones that ferry the human souls displaced by She, which I don't think we've ever gotten that as one of the things that happens on it before.
Yeah, this was revealed in this book, I think.
Then the green go to the Middle Umbra, where the werewolves hang out, and the gold goes to the Kingdom of Dawn, or Fate for the Moray, which theoretically is also the High Umbra. There's some mechanics for what happens to denizens on the Silver Path. Not good news.
Yeah. Per turn, you lose a point of glamour. Once that's out, you lose health levels every turn.
And it costs glamour if you try to attack someone on it.
Yep. Which is actually, I like having that instead of like a flat out ban, because it's like, well, you're on the Silver Path, you're safer.
Yeah.
But if something's attacking you, it might be worth it for it to attack you still.
Something very determined can still make a go of it.
Yep.
Yeah. But that's part of why their freedom of movement earthward is so restricted.
Yeah, you can't really use it for travel, but maybe for a brief attack.
And even if they do get through to Earth, we get a sidebar on the Meridianus, which it calls the psychic undertow. I love Chris Howard really knows how to turn a phrase sometimes, I must say. But it's an ancient defense left by the Tuatha to enforce the Silver Ban, and it basically sounds like the Avatar Storm.
Yes.
trying to cross back over into the dreaming will...
It predates, I think, the whole
It
Avatar
does,
storm.
yeah. But as soon as they get 2 points of banality for being on Earth, then they're fine.
Mm-hmm.
We go through the near dreaming first. I liked how this sort of history was thought out a bit with this. So, like, they talk about how the near dreaming was dominated by the adhene until during the resurgence, the Shi re-widened the silver paths, which allowed Kithain to come settle again and everything. And it makes sense because if the commoners were cut off from the dreaming for 600 years and the Shi were mostly holed up in Arcadia, like maybe they roved through once in a while, then the denizens could be like, okay, yeah, we'll just set up shop here.
Yeah, there were still some places like the fields behind and stuff that I think were.
Yeah.
But it also is interesting for if you ever run an interregnum game and your players get into the dreaming, it's not even as safe as it is in Changeling the Dreaming post Resurgence. I like that.
Food for thought.
Mm-hmm. One thing I wish from an organizational perspective, they broke out the Tenebrous realms versus the things already covered in Dreams and Nightmares, but
yeah, that would be,
from our perspective at least, be handy. But
although I'd also say that you could just assume all of these are now off the silver path, given they don't really give details about how much the death of Ravana / Evanescence shattered the silver path.
There is still some silver path, though. They don't say it's all gone.
Well, I just mean you could make the argument that any of these realms is now off.
Wait, was the silver path damaged, or was it the other roads got way more opened?
I think it's probably some of both.
Okay.
Maybe not damaged.
Yeah.
The other roads certainly got open, though, yes.
So you have the mists, separate from the meridian. That's where you get hit with the memory issues of going into and out of the dreaming. But it's also a place, and some denizens and other beings that don't like Kithain might wait for you there.
Yeah.
And you'd be a little bit confused for a bit.
Something bit me.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have the fields before, which are the Bogan, Puka, etc. villages that we saw in Dreams and Nightmares. They have been blasted by the way through Nightmares. So now there are Red Cap Raiders coming in, Dark Chimera, etc.
Mm-hmm. Can you say the next one?
Maharaura.
Okay. Yeah, this is the near dreaming. It says Northern India anyway.
Yeah.
Bangladesh.
In the week of Nightmares, it's supposed to be Bangladesh.
Yeah, it sounded cool. It's like one of the coolest new places, and they just blasted it all with nukes and stuff.
Yep. The home of the Naraka.
Mm-hmm.
I love the descriptions, though. I mean, so just a brief excerpt. The Samvarta, or Doomsday Cloud, vents its fiery, ash-laden anger upon the land. Hung heavy with fragmented parasemes and solomons, it vomits forth lightning, black rain, and tar-like hailstones. Mm-hmm. A great red and black fiery vortex has appeared in the sky, and seeks to gather the entire realm into its great mouth. Some say it leads to a realm called the Lemnis Gate. At night, the vortex turns blue, and great spider-like phantoms ride the howling air trods which surround it, attacking those foolish enough to be outdoors, dragging their screaming victims to an unknown fate. That's just opportunity after opportunity.
Yeah. Well, I just realized it's a horribly destroyed part of the dreaming that's not banal.
Yeah.
Like, it's not about banality. It's about fury and fire and scary, raging things.
By contrast, we have the Blotkeldur, which is just kind of a marshland where the White Court once lived.
Mm-hmm. Is this supposed to be like a bunch of marsh realms all over the place? Because it's still near dreaming, right?
The dreaming has one marsh. Then there's the Middle March, which are the foothills to the Splintered Mountains. Mm-hmm. They're populated by Fomorian-aligned redcaps who were rejected from Earth, and the Acheron group of Firbolg and their jeweled crags.
So if you were to make these redcaps, would you make them as denizens and have 3 aria and...
I guess so. I mean, we don't really get conclusive answers to that in the book, but I really like the idea of doing that.
Yeah.
We'll get to Arya in the next chapter.
Mm-hmm. And then we get the Wildweir. It's formerly Acadian that denizens have taken over, but now House Elanud's taking back. And there's several dark kin in there, including subspecies of Firbolg.
Which are from the ancient Irish Smiths.
Yep. And there's various Fuoths. And then some of them are independent, and some of them are siding with the White Court.
I love how they kind of describe these Firbolg as being proto-democratic, warlords living in filth, basically. And it just makes me think of Holy Grail with we're anarcho-syndicalists. Yeah.
And they have a new denizen here called the Obda. Also, no stats or deeper description. So that's great.
Then we move into the far dreaming, which is where most of the denizens live. Most of the ones that live there have downplayed or forgotten Earth, hence their shock when the storms rolled forth from it in 1999.
Yep. We have the fields behind, like the other fields not doing so great, although there's a Seelie-minded female Fearbog Knight.
I love her.
This is one of those, like, did they do playtesting? Was this somebody's character?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's the Bullydales, which, again, we saw in Dreams and Nightmares. The Redcaps who live there are the ones who have started raiding out into the fields. There's also Swamp Druids. I don't know if that's another adhene.
Yeah, maybe. Golden Naraka were showing up there, too.
Yeah.
And then we have some sad news for Quawks and Mucks.
No. It's like the Scouring of the Shire.
Yeah, that's, it's been nasty attacked.
The Winter Weir is the silent and frozen forest home of the Fuas. Currently, the Winter Court is reawakening there.
I picture there's like one light post in there.
Yes. And another kith, the Morosco, Frost Servants. And an individual called the Ketlet, which sounds like not a kith, but just a one-off.
Oh, it's packs of feral wolf puka.
That too.
Like, are they still saying puns and stuff while they're like ripping people apart in pack tactics? Anyway.
It would be interesting if, because all forests in the Dreaming are part of the one forest, and the Arcadian Gateway realm in the Middle Umbra has a Path of Balor, maybe those feral wolf puka are werewolves who got through into the Dreaming and went mad.
Maybe.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, there's other stuff in the Dreams and Nightmares.
Yep.
Other wolves. Oh, I cannot. Kuraxara. In the Splintered Mountains.
The quintessential Dreaming battlefield, where generals called the Five Great Beasts do constant battle for the Triumph Cask of Sorrows.
Yep.
But also, the Red Court's reawakening here, and the death of Ravana also scorched this plain. I like that they're just sort of these Fearbog war machines scattered all around as well.
Yeah, and the intro fiction's like, we don't know how to use most of these anymore. But
yeah. A lot of these descriptions, there's a lot of politics and plot that you have to kind of be all in on to use them effectively, especially this one.
Yeah, this is one of those, like, I can't point to why, but it just doesn't interest me very much. This bit.
There's also Thunder Giants there. Then the Deep Dreaming rarely has denizens, but it does include the Oniric realms. There's reference to this axle, which I guess is supposed to be like the axis mundi of the Dreaming, with the realm of Dawn, Fate, at the top. So it's this paradise centered around Yggdrasil, the world tree, on an island in the Silver Sea. Very difficult to get to, unless you're an avatar of Fate. It's very Nordically beautiful, the way it's described. The Norns live there.
Yeah, but Arcadia is one of... there's 9 minor Orneric realm and 3 major ones, and Arcadia is one of the major ones. The other 2 being Night and Silence are the major ones.
Yes. A nice tip of the hat to Midsummer Night's Dream.
Kingdom of Dawn? Dawn? I can't pronounce it.
Dawn.
Yeah.
Yes.
Fate.
Yeah. If you're going to use the Realm of Dawn, then that's going to be quite a quest. I like it as the center of an entire quest story.
It's like interesting. It's like, oh yeah, it's like you have like when the Moray mixed in a changeling group, and the Kithain are like, yeah, Arcadia's our home. And Moray's like, no, actually, this other place is mine.
Then the Autumn World.
Yep.
Seen as a kind of a dark fate place to go by many of the Dreaming residents.
Well, it's a place where it's like horrible, crushing banality, but also like amazing, weird glamour, and yeah, it's just I just love. It's like, yeah, we're from the Dreaming. We're used to the Dreaming. Oh my god, the Autumn World. What is this place? This is nuts. This is all very confusing and exoticized. I liked it.
There's a very cool description where it says, while a denizen may be far more powerful in the high branches of the far Dreaming, the roots of the tree hold the true source of their power. Like, yeah. So something that's kind of stated a few times through the book as part of the theme of the game and part of the horror of the game is that denizen characters are just discovering that they're essentially figments of mortal imagination. And that grappling with that, one possible outcome is to realize, hey, if I go to Earth and manipulate some of those dreams, maybe I can do right by myself. That kind of sounds pretty cool. But yes, they have a difficult time getting there. Either through the green paths or Twilight Road Trods.
And once they do get there, it's not easier.
Yeah. To survive as a creature of pure dream in the Autumn World is not easy. There are 3 primary methods that they use. I don't think we need to go into all the mechanics because they are really long.
No, but one of them, okay, phantom form, I don't like it because it's not how the chimera work. Like it's when it's called described as you're like an immaterial spirit that can move through walls and stuff, and I'm like, why are they like that? But like a dragon from the Dreamings, not like that at all.
I think for 2 reasons. One is that this is 2nd edition, and the exact capabilities or
no, but this is the first time it ever described anything like that, moving through walls and stuff.
Well, I never had a problem with Chimera moving through walls.
Oh, okay.
That's kind of, and I think that 2nd edition didn't really specify one way or the other. C20 kind of takes a firmer position.
Okay.
But I think the other thing is just that points to they're a little more durable than an average or even above average Chimera. Like they have a little bit more substance to them metaphysically.
Yeah. And it is not like we do not get rules in any edition for like it says Chimera don't survive easily in the Autumn World, but it doesn't really give system. This is at least a system. So
yeah,
where you're getting it's like every 12 hours you're sort of rolling stuff and potentially getting banality. I think this might be like the first time that you roll glamour to avoid banality in Changeling was this. And then they can possess people.
Yeah.
It's called simple possession. That's a very rough possession. Or they can possess sleeping people, which is more effective.
Yeah. Slip right in. Mm-hmm. There are some that have bodies called the evanescent. Either they were trapped or hid on Earth at some point as spies or visitors or sleeper agents. Some of them just liked being fleshy and stayed there. And very few actually went through the Changeling way.
But not non-zero. Like, it's not zero.
Yeah. So there are some reincarnating adhene out there.
Changeling adhene.
Yeah. And some stayed after the War of Trees. Others got through later in Ataru Realm. Others have just arrived. We get more mechanics about glamour and banality. So as creatures of pure glamour, they're basically immune to bedlam and shed banality more quickly, but they get trapped in the Autumn World pretty easily. Mm-hmm. They do have a slight bit of banality in them because, as the book points out, pure glamour without banality is nothing but chaotic creative energy. So
They talk about ways of getting glamour, which are sort of the same. Reaping. Was reaping invented here?
I think, yes, this is where reaping was first created. Frightening someone to death for glamour.
Mm-hmm. And that shows up in C20. But yeah.
It points out that musing is tougher, but rapture is easier.
Which is funny because one of them are literally called muses. But
yeah. Wah, wah. Well, don't they have they don't have that penalty or whatever? So.
Yeah.
We get notes on the Dream War. It says the human subconscious is the arena in which they, the denizens, battle to determine the nature of reality. And it also says they kind of see humans as batteries, Matrix style.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And dream traps. They can get caught in dreams.
Yep.
I wish there were mechanics for that.
Yeah. I also wish you'd have to worry about that for your chimerical companion got stuck in someone's dream. You have to get him out.
Yep.
And they get into details about REM and non-REM sleep.
Yeah, I can't imagine in what context I would need to use that, but I really hope I find out someday.
Yeah, you're like, okay, so if you're in REM sleep, your banality drops by this much, but you're non-REM sleep, it drops by this much. Like, okay, that's...
At some point, we'll need to have this information.
Yep.
Anyway, that's chapter 2. There's 50 ideas a minute here, and I feel like one has to really elect to use them all. Mm-hmm. But I think the groundwork for a chronicle is already being laid by, there's a suggestion about deciding how earthbound you want your denizen game to be, and it really gives you lots of modular options for setting that precisely.
Yeah.
And I like that.
For me, there's a lot of starting points for things I would house rule and change, but at least it's a starting point. It's not a...
Yeah.
I can look at each thing and be like, well, I like that. And this other one, I'm like, no, but it gives me an idea of what I do like instead.
I say this as someone who's written these before. They do feel like unplay-tested mechanics in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I'm betting they are unplay-tested given the...
Yeah.
I mean, even beforehand, I'm not sure how much playtesting had, but in the Arcanist days, I can't imagine there was any, really.
Yeah. So then, chapter 3. The sleep of reason produces monsters. Splats.
Yeah. I got some nitpicky notes at this point for some reason. And there's things like, how does aging work? I don't understand. And
Well, it's helpful to know that they live for hundreds of years in the dreaming before being reincarnated.
Or are they reincarnated?
It says the next life cycle. I'm not really sure.
Okay, no, they have. Okay, that makes more sense. But sometimes they're not. Sometimes they live a lot longer.
Okay. The important and relevant part here is the aria, I think,
Yep.
which replaces seeming and court.
Mm-hmm.
Although they do still have legacies, which is also a little confusing, but I like it. So.
Mm-hmm. So you get 3 of them.
Yes.
And I keep wondering, like, is this supposed to be tied to the 3 Fomorian courts? It doesn't say, but
I think it's tied to id, ego, and superego.
yeah, okay.
Sort of tied to.
I'm not sure which one's the white court, which one's the red court, which one's the green court. But...
I mean, if I had to say, it would be the red, white, green, probably.
Yep. So we have the 3 aria. These are all Greek, aren't they?
Yeah.
There's an interesting, weird mix of different languages used in this.
Lots of Greek, lots of Slavic, lots of Sanskrit, I suppose.
Yeah.
So there's the Dionii, which are the instinctive, aggressive impulses, the id, and it's the natural state for many denizens. The Araminai, which is the rational, self-focused, pragmatic, constructive self. And the Apoliai, the higher superego that calls to a higher purpose, which isn't necessarily a good or moral one. It's just their purpose as Darkkin.
And I think if I understand the mechanics correctly, you can switch between them. Does it change your glamour and willpower every time?
It does. Yeah. They have a whole sidebar explaining it in context because, oh boy, is that needed. Yeah, again, the mechanics are probably way too complicated to go through here. But...
yeah, and then trying to use that with the C20 imbalance, which just really hurt my head. But
what I like, though, is that they become the filter through which you look at the behavior of each splat. Like, as each one of these moves through different aria, they behave slightly differently and look different. And it also, because you assign a legacy to each one, it gives you the option of filtering legacies through something besides Seelie Unseelie.
Yeah, and it also affects your birthrights, too, sometimes.
Yeah. So then there's this bit on belief and governance, saying that the different splats have their own cultures and religions and conflicts. I'm like, okay, cool.
Yeah. I do like the legacy. Like, I personally, like, that's how I house rule my changeling games with legacy and court.
So then the splats.
Yeah. A lot of this is very much like typical Kith write-ups. But one thing that keeps... I didn't come across explaining why. They each get a choice of realm affinity.
Yeah. I'm here for it.
Yeah, I'm like, sure. I don't think it even tells you that. It just says, like...
It just puts it, yeah.
Yeah. So we have the Aw Cherry, which are...
They scourge the planet with disease.
I actually took notes of, like, which ones are from various cultures. So, like, the Acheri are supposed to be from all over the place. Like, they're, like, one of those universal kith of disease.
The name is from India, but then they have this list of alternative names from other cultures. I don't know the accuracy of the parallels for all of them, but I like the effort to show that global.
I figured the way kiths work in Changeling, it's about as accurate for any culture as any other, probably.
So the Achre they weed out the weak to let the strong flourish, and they're widely loathed for their role. They're also deeply misanthropic.
They're the evil ones of all these. They're like just flat out evil of all the denizens we get here.
With Vampire, there's a lot of Setite Ravnos parallels. It's like they're both corruptors and corruptible because they're very susceptible to temptation.
Yeah, their affinities are actor or fae. They can generate plague nervosa
from their shadow and tempt people.
Yep.
But then they also are easily tempted, and they can't affect anyone with their birthrights who's wearing red. The Aonids, who are the muses. It does feel a little redundant to have a kith that are the muses, considering we have musing. But all right.
But they're also sometimes furies, I think.
That's true, yeah. Toreador vibes.
Yep. The one annoying thing about it is I don't like kiths that just look human, and they just look human.
Yeah. They are very attached to their dreamers, but can be cruel in love. They're experts on culture who must inspire others. And they can go from hedonism to high philosophy.
You're like, I want to play a Leonhan or a Fiona, but I don't want to be a noble or a she. Here you go.
Yeah.
Realm affinities are actor or scene.
They get a major social boost for their birthright and can't botch persuasion or performance. And here's where it says they're not affected by the silver ban, even though earlier in the book they were.
And they get like a super ravaging.
Using lust.
Yep.
Or seduction. But they can't handle being upstaged by someone in a competition.
like, say, I don't know, somebody's talking about who's prettier, and there's some golden apples or something on the line. Yeah.
I think it is focused on artistic talents.
Yeah. Oh, they talk about how House Fiona is particularly easy to seduce. I like that. Okay, anyway, Dribble.
Yes. Woo, Irish mythology. So in the Irish Book of Invasions, the Firbolg were the ones who preceded the arrival of the Tuatha.
Yep. These are the most alternate to she for me. Like,
Yep.
you want to have some ideas with she, but there's things about the she that rub you the wrong way, especially like on Sealy side.
I especially like how these are the nobles who have fallen on hard times.
Yep.
You know, like these are nobles who feel like they're at rock bottom and they're about to rise again. And that's something we don't often see with the she. So
we still have other bits where they sort of make fun of House Baylor.
Yeah. They're chaos bringers with a love of wilderness. They're passionate and they have antlers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they can alter the
Fearless.
Yeah, that's kind of powerful-ish, maybe. It's confusing.
Something that got nerfed in C20, and I think it's important to point out here, is that by burning glamour, they can actually cause these random chaotic changes in the autumn world.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's part of why they have 1 birthright and 2 frailties, which is otherwise a choice that's like, what? Yeah. They have a dietary requirement, and they have to be sacrificed to in order to gain glamour. Then the Fuah.
Mm-hmm.
It says to pronounce it Fu-oth, but I think it's Fuah.
Yeah, these are for the ones you're like, okay, you at first were drawn to Puka because they're animal people, but then nothing about the Puka thing actually made you go, oh, I want to do that. There you go.
Yeah. I think of them as like feral satyrs.
Yeah, that too. Or maybe, yeah, they're feral satyr / stallion satyrs, but like other animals potentially. And
Yeah. They're not all goat-legged.
They can talk to animals.
And they have super athletics like the satyrs.
Yep.
Plus natural weapons.
And they're in a way more unbalanced than the satyrs in terms of...
They have a frenzy mechanic.
Yep.
I mean, I think it's almost exactly the vampire frenzy mechanic.
So there we go. The werewolves and the other shapeshifters aren't Puka, they're Fuah.
Yeah, that could be. Then we have the Keramet, who are enchanted humans, usually dreamers or Kithain, brought into the dreaming at the moment of their death to serve... insert purpose here.
Mm-hmm.
I think mostly messengers and ferrying the souls of those displaced by the she, but...
These are, like, neat, but these obviously work for the Tuatha. Why are they... Maybe they are kind of neutral, some of them, at least as a kid.
Oh, yeah. So, actually, yes, Keramet and Moray are declared neutral in the conflict.
Yep. Both too important.
So the Keramet can go to the underworld on the Black Paths of Balor, as well as the Silver Path. They have ferocious will as dead people, because they're like emotionless and dutiful, so they have super will. They have the frailty, the Pact of Dagda, and I don't really understand. It's like it keeps them to their word when sworn by this pact. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what that means. Like, does someone say, I swear on the Pact of Dagda? I'm not really sure what that...
Yeah, I think it is a specific note. Yeah, it'd be nice if they got some wording on it in the big blank space we get in this page.
Yeah. And also they're sad and they just want to feel.
But that changes. That's one of the things that changes heavily depending on their aria.
Then there's the Morai, the Oracles and Guardians of Humanity.
Yep. I like these ones. Are they all women? I'm a little bit...
Yes, I believe so. They're kind of the classic triple maiden mother crone as they move through their arias.
And this is like heavily both Greek and Norse when they go through stuff about them.
Yeah. I like that it calls them the interpreters, not servants of fate. They follow the call of destiny. They are also protective of their dreamers. They're mostly solitary. And there's a reference to them being cursed for lying about a prophecy and thereby being banished from the autumn world. But I don't know that we get any additional info on that. So they can see scraps of people's futures. There's a curse on anyone who tries to harm them or interfere with their role. And they're highly superstitious. The curse thing is pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm. And then we get the Naraka. Because of the explosion, pretty much none of them remember who they are.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and this is from Bangladesh, it says here. And they all resemble Kali, the Hindu goddess of destruction. Which, moving on.
As a mythological reference, Narakas are both the names for hells in Hinduism and Buddhism, as well as sometimes the denizens who live there. So it's demon, essentially.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, people had pointed to previously the lack of representation of South Asia, and it is a little bit like, oh, so this is what we get.
Well, this and partially the plague bearers.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, this book.
Yep.
Anyway, the Naraka... I wish there were more about Naraka who see their current situation as an opportunity, in the sense of like, oh yeah, we've forgotten everything, but this is our chance to decide who we are. That kind of attitude.
Yeah, the whole kit's just like, you took the amnesia flaw and specifically you want to try to undo it.
Right. It says they embrace anarchy and nihilism. Like, that's their reaction to what they've been through. I don't know. It's just a little bit... But they're chaotic embodiments of destruction who hate human weakness.
And they get some powerful combat abilities. And
yeah. Fire breathing.
They're vulnerable to music, and they can only possess Hindu people.
Even though Bangladesh is largely not Hindu. But
yeah.
Anyway, but those are the splats. Chapter
4, Building the Perfect Beast.
Mostly the same as second edition rules.
What did you think about the ability limitations?
I'm fine with it. I mean, it makes enough sense.
Yeah.
And the merit is cheap enough that by buying it to open up the rest of those abilities, I think that's fine.
And it doesn't have the problem that the Nunahi one did, so...
Yeah. But there are new knowledges, which are Autumn lore, Changeling lore, and Denizen lore. Pretty straightforward.
I don't like super specific lores, but I know that's...
No, me neither.
I think this did make me... I take a note. Should we have a Languages in the Dreaming as a full episode topic?
Oh, next season. Season.
But you have Autumn lore, which explicitly is covered up by a 3-point merit.
Yeah.
Means you don't need it anymore or something. Anyway. But Autumn lore also knows human languages, I think?
It's whatever part of the waking world a denizen first wakes up in. That's...
Yeah, but then I think if you get 4 in it...
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. We get merits and flaws.
Yep.
The merits, I guess, were okay. I think the flaws I would be less inclined to use. Obviously, Evanescent and Human Shell are the most directly useful ones because they allow you to have a game on Earth.
Yeah.
But
we get a paragraph. I do not like the paragraph under merits and flaws where it has nothing to do with Denizen Dream. It's just ranting about min-maxing. I'm like...
Someone had opinions.
I like Change Aria. I think it would take that with a character. Probably.
Yeah, I suppose. Spending willpower, though, is always dicey.
And then you can pick your legacy.
Fair. We get the new background of Destiny, which I kind of wish they had just used the mage version, like, to get some kind of mechanical benefit. But
yeah, this is like level 1. You achieve at least one important quest. I'm like, if this background could prevent scheduling conflicts from terminating a chronicle, I will.
Yeah. And then we have their version of title. And I like that we get a glimpse into some of the other leadership structures that they have.
Yeah, this is very much how C20 title works. So.
Yeah.
I'm surprised with we're reading this how many things were sort of like a preview of C20 almost. Like.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I assume Chris Howard was involved in its creation.
Oh, Banality Magnet. I am annoyed at the implication that specifically beer is banal, but...
I didn't really need the sidebar on caste systems.
Yeah. Oh, my other note was, why was the blackmailed flaw in there? Because it has nothing to do with it. Like, it even talks about like somebody's gonna...
That's what I mean. These flaws I'm like indifferent to for the most part. Some
of them were very Denizen specific, but like blackmailed is like anybody could take that. Like it doesn't even...
There's nothing stopping you from taking it as a non-denizen.
Yeah, but it's like you have to like pay lots of money. And I'm like, what?
Yeah. So then the 3 arts.
Yep.
There's the Autumn Way, which is basically like discount Changeling Way, the art.
Yep. I thought Autumn Way 5 was kind of cool, where you can...
Yeah, so Autumn Way 5 is equivalent to Chemistry 5, which the Ravnos can do. But the other powers are like Better Possession, the Weird Read for Changelings, or for adhene.
Yep.
I liked Zeitgeist. I thought Zeitgeist was fun, where you just like absorb all the local cultures and languages and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then walk the Silver Path. Discord is the one, if you remember, I think this might have been originally intended for Book of Houses 2 as like a Balor battle art.
This is the Dragon's Ire art from C20 almost. Like it's not identical, but like it's as close as the other arts are.
Yeah, basically. But if you remember, the back cover of Book of Houses 2 said they were introducing a new art. I think they had meant to introduce it there. Maybe it came in here. But yeah, absolutely. It does battle things.
Yep.
It starts off really strong, but honestly, by the time it gets to level 5, I'm like, that's it. You get better at cutting arms off. All right.
Yeah, it's like the Dragon's Ire art in C20.
Yeah. And then OGO Neuromancy. Oh, how I miss thee.
It's a lot more restricted than what we get in C20, I noticed. But
yeah,
I
but
like...
C20 doesn't let you turn people into Chimera.
Yes, level 5, except for level 5, which turns...
It's only worth it for level 5.
does not work on Denizens, Chimera, Thalane, or other creatures who are already fully spirit. I'm like, Thalane? I thought they were changelings.
I don't know. Anyway, the other powers are similar to C20 Oneiromancies, like sending dreams, reading dreams, entering dreams.
And there's a confusing little thing about the Fey realm, and it's like, why are they using Fey 3 instead of Fey 4?
Because they're Chimera and not Galeen? I don't know. There's a lot to read into that.
But Chimera to each other. So for a Denizen, a changeling would be Fey 3.
Naturally. Maybe they felt Fey 4 was too high. I don't know. So yeah, I mean, overall, I don't know how much of this I would use, but it's a nice little bit of crunch. Mm-hmm. It's like a peanut in the middle of the candy bar.
It's a very second edition chapter of arts and things like that.
Yeah.
Like, I've definitely seen worse from the books we've been reviewing, so...
Then chapter 5, for storytellers only. I hate when they say that. I get it, but I also don't.
Yeah, I don't like that either. Though some of it the players need to know, so we get like how to run a game through mood and theme.
I don't like that mystery is under both of them. But I like it though, because the denizens, they say, are on the edge of infinite possibilities and hold the balance of power. And mystery is that uncertainty kind of aspect about what's going to happen. Whereas the theme, really discovery would probably be a better word than mystery, as they kind of explore this state that they're in.
Yeah. We get some brief chronicle ideas, which like are both straightforward and kind of obvious, but I think if you're going to write this much about it, it kind of makes sense to write this much.
Their relations to others seem pretty confrontational overall.
Yeah, well, the werewolf things, like, they look like Bane spirits, except for they're also, like, on the side of the gear. Okay.
The ones that are most interesting to me, like, I think you can assume that with denizens and any other splat, the default position is going to be at odds with each other. It even sets it up as denizens versus everybody else. But the ones that I think would be most interesting, because you could complicate them, there's no historical love lost between them and the changelings, but there are denizens who don't want to be pawns of the Fomorians anymore. It's kind of like the Good Omens hook, like, oh, we actually like Earth the way it is. Please don't destroy it, you know?
Yep.
That conflict with the Fomorians could then also be the makings of an alliance with changelings. And then denizen versus denizen, it would split them along the lines within their own kith, within their own adhene. So I think that kind of three-way, kind of viewing it from those three angles, it's the same story told in different interesting ways. More than the others, I think that's the kind of denizen game I'd want to run.
Yeah, there's some stuff that was not, like the denizens versus mages only talks about the technocracy.
Yeah. And it's just confrontational. So.
And then denizens versus wraiths, I know you haven't really read much wraith, if any, but like there actually is some hooks they could have put in, but they didn't.
Oh, I'm sure.
It actually works better than with changelings because of all the dream connections, because there are wraiths, the Sandmen, who deal with human dreams and go into the dreams and do... That's a place that they could have been in interaction that's just not mentioned here,
But also, Wraith had ended by this point, so maybe they didn't want to rub salt in the wound.
Yeah, but then they still talk about it. So.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's, the Maelstrom just wiped it out. Okay.
Yeah.
Then we get the Augmen, which
I'm
was...
so glad this is back.
Yeah, this is from Dreams and Nightmares. There is a big change here.
Yes.
Which I don't know was intentional or not, because they get Augmen in the near dreaming. And
they sure do.
Kithain, it starts in the far dreaming.
I like how it really drives home that they have the reverse of the changeling experience, where they're used to being extraordinarily powerful in their natural habitat, and then coming to Earth is like what dramatically weakens them.
Yep.
So it's the inverse of how it usually goes in a game.
Yeah.
Some of these bumps are described as cumulative and others not, which gets a little confusing.
And some don't happen at all.
And some don't happen at all. But yeah, they get powerful. I chose a random example where I wanted to see what the Fua were like in the deep dreaming. So they have like satyr speed and athletics and whatever else. They can move 50 yards plus 5 times dexterity yards per turn in their chosen environment. So, like, if you say they have dex 4 and you set a combat turn at 3 seconds, they can get up to 230 kilometers per hour. So, pretty fast. And then they also get 4 dots of stamina and have natural weapons doing strength plus 3 aggravated damage. All of that is to say, eat it, Garu. So,
Yeah. Well, that's actually for augment in the deep dreaming. That's not
yeah, deep
over the
dreaming.
top at all.
Yeah. And then the Naraka are just like running around breathing aggravated damage, and the Firbolg can more or less warp reality as they want. So they get powerful. Someday I'm going to do those updated augment rules for the Storyteller's Vault.
Yeah, the Moray are kind of screwed in the deep dreaming. Anyway,
Yeah.
They don't get much benefit and really screwed.
They're okay with that. They have a sense of duty.
Mm-hmm. Let me get some stuff on the Fomorians.
And another reference to the Book of the Crimson She, which we saw in Midnight Circus.
I did not pull out Dreams and Nightmares to compare the Fomorian descriptions with this, because we had a bit in there, didn't we?
I don't think we need to, because I think when I think about the Fomorian stuff, this is my go-to reference. It's certainly more developed, I think. There's a suggestion that they are the ones perpetuating the darkness in the world of darkness because they are the sum total of all that is dark and murderous in the human heart, in contrast to the Tuatha, who are humanity's highest aspirations, rather than its darkest fears. It raises the question, if the Fomorians were truly defeated instead of just shut away and slumbering, what would that leave behind? And I suspect it would be like a very banal, happy place. Like everything is perfect, and there's no dynamism to it without that little sliver of darkness. But,
you think, like, if the Tuatha De Danann were still there, or
I guess we'll have to get to Time of Judgment and see. We get the note again here that the Dark Kin resent their masters, former masters in some cases, just as much as the Changelings resent the She or the Tuatha because they were used as soldiers and then abandoned. But the Elder Darks are gathering the ones who are still faithful.
Yep. We get descriptions of the 3 courts, which, weirdly, the first 2 completely match really well from Dresden Files, the 2 of the vampire courts.
I always think of the White Court as the gentry from Changeling the Lost.
Yep.
But I guess they could fit into any of these.
They're very corrupting and
cruel.
Yep. The Red Court are like rawr.
Yeah, the war machines.
And then the Green Court are my favorite. They're the weird, creepy things that don't make any sense, who deliberately like imprison themselves at the end of the war for no apparent reason.
I think of them as Cthulhu creatures or Celestials from Marvel Comics. I also like the thought that they own the Silver Path, and the Silver Path is actually a path of Balor, and when they awake, it will be theirs. Because they live under the Silver Sea. Anyway. Sleep well, childlings.
Yeah, if you think about where the paths of Balor go, well, there's the gold path.
Yeah.
Yeah, wait, only one of them colors matches up? I don't know.
There's also the Black Court, potentially, so...
Yeah.
Thinking about it, all of this really demonstrates how there are 2 different kinds of winter that changelings worry about, because you have sort of the petrifying horror of dark glamour and then the stultifying horror of banality. And the 2 get conflated a lot, but they're actually rather different. Co-occurring, maybe.
I mean, the White Court's closest to both.
Yeah.
Still.
Well, the Red Court are like the dreams of destruction and conquering, and there's arguments that there's a lot of banality from that historically in the books.
One thing I keep thinking about, my own ideas and stuff, like, how do the courts get along with each other? Like, is it about as good as the Seelie and Unseelie, or even worse, or is it more tight than that?
I imagine probably not very close until they need to be, such as when they were fighting the War of the Trees.
Yep.
But then the appendix, we have some famous faces. There's Anastadal, who's the best one.
Yep, the Firbolg, whose people think might be a she or something, or a troll or something.
Yes.
And I first look at her hat, I'm like, where's her horns fitting? And I'm like, oh, it's coming out of her helmet, but it looks like it's sort of part of it.
It's a well-designed helm.
Mm-hmm.
There's King Azag, who I assume is supposed to be the same as Azag from the Prelude, that Firbolg warlord.
Who's been around since the War of... The description does not match, though, from the...
Maybe it's his father. I don't know.
I don't know, but he's still around since the War of the Trees.
Yeah. No love for changelings.
Then there's the big pharma evil thing. He's controlling
Big Pharma, former Nazi doctor?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Moving on, there's Queen Lear.
She's basically the White Witch from Narnia.
Yep. Like, Fearbog would have made sense for her, but...
Yeah, but I guess she occasionally frenzies and freezes people solid.
There's Lord Udry, which is the leader of the Naraka who did not get completely mind-wiped by the explosion, although did really get messed up psychologically.
And still lives at the Ground Zero.
Yep.
Tukil, the Shadow Knight, who walks the black paths of Balor as a Karamet.
This made me wonder, like, do Karamet not age? Like, it talks about the other denizens aging, but, like, would Karamet age? They're ghosts.
I guess not, yeah, I mean...
But because he's described as being around since, like, Court of Charlemagne or something, like he died.
Yeah. He broke his oath of fealty for a Fey woman. They say he's the leader of l'Armée Furieuse, which I think is like the French version of the Wild Hunt.
There's a Baelor in here, Heroth the Mute. Like, the other Baelor do not like him and want him. When House Baelor says, "You've gone too far, buddy," like, you have a...
But he's an interesting foe because he's been in the Dreaming for thousands of years. He served the Fomorians and he's still fighting to control the plane of Kuraksara. But then he's disappeared and he might be in the Autumn World and he might be unaffected by the mists. And all of that together is like, interesting.
And then they talk about the Aslinthi, which are those spider people that was one of my favorite parts of Harbingers of Winter.
Yeah. We should include a link to Harbingers of Winter in the show notes because that's like a sequel to this book in part.
Yeah, well, we did the episode, didn't we?
Yeah, so that's what I mean.
Okay, yeah.
Listen to that episode. They have warriors and priests. They worship the Fomorians. They have web trods, and they do lots of torture and magic. Go them.
Yep. They're the denizens is how I think of them. Yes. Creepy, mysterious to the denizens.
So the Triumph Cask of Sorrows, a weapon of unspeakable power, even unopened, its effects were immense, raining poison and fire down upon its bearer's enemies as they sought to stand against him. Rumors of its power when opened speak of the utter annihilation of foes, instantaneously rendering them nothing more than ash. It is said that there are no defenses against the cask's powers. Though the Red Fomorian king broke the cask's key into 9 fragments, rumor tells that some have been reassembled, and with each another calamity threatens. 2 key fragments have been assembled, 2 Fomorian courts now awaken.
At first when I read that, I'm like, does that mean there's 9 Fomorian courts?
It's like the breaking of the seals in Revelation.
Yeah, but if you get the first 3 and all 3 Fomorian courts awaken, and there's still 6 more, what are you doing for those last 6? Yeah.
So I've never been one for the idea of like a high concept war against the Fomorians game, but there are some great pieces in here for anyone who wants to run such a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, we'll get to this eventually, but the Triumph Cask was supposed to return as a MacGuffin.
Yeah. And then my physical copy had an ad for Mage Sorcerer's Crusade Swashbuckler's Handbook.
Woo!
And Warren Concordia.
Coming soon. There's also a character sheet where it's all well and good except the formatting. Oh.
But they didn't, like, I don't know, give it myth lore or...
No, the rest is fine. The actual content is fine. It's just all the spacing issues.
Oh, but it doesn't have the new things that they added. Okay.
It has Arya up top.
No, it doesn't have the 3 lores, though.
Well, those are secondaries, I suppose. Mm-hmm. There's also a really cool icon on the back cover, I must say.
Yes, I love that icon. So yeah, what are your thoughts of this book?
I think I like the adhene as a concept, in part because they open up a lot of questions, some of which are later answered in C20, but things like, what do they imply for the existence of the other non-changeling kiths in the Dreaming? Will others make their way to Earth? Again, there's that hook of some of the denizens like Earth and they don't want the Fomorians to take it over, so what do? Fish out of water narrative possibilities combined with... I guess the sort of confusion and animosity of the Kithain who live on Earth being like, who are you and what are you doing here? So that combination, I think, makes for an interesting story. In terms of functionality, I think they do actually mix more readily with Kithain, either in a motley or in Kithain society, than like Thalain would as a general rule, or Hsien, or an anime. Like, I can see more connections between the goals and the experiences of the denizens with the Kithain, but they add this unpredictability that's really cool. But the book isn't only about them, because it's also a sequel to Dreams and Nightmares. So I like that we get sort of more metaplot updates and more in-depth stuff about the Dreams and Nightmares things. Even despite like the inconsistencies, there's so many ideas that are usable.
Yeah. For me, this book, it had amazing potential, and what we got was okay. Like there's enough problems with it, but it's kind of frustrating, partly because there's so much good stuff too. It's I wish there was like somebody revamped this and like I'd use it as inspiration for what I do in my chronicle, but I wouldn't directly take much of anything from here into my chronicle, if that makes sense.
I mean, I think part of that, you have to think about page count and just the fact that when you only have so much room and so much
time. Given the constraints, especially like the time constraints, the budget, they probably didn't get paid a ton to make it. Like, I get that. But I wish it was made under a better budget and better. Like, it would have been.
It sparks enough ideas in me that I'm willing to pick up the slack, if that makes sense.
Okay, this is gonna say So I brought up Exalted the Fairfolk before.
Yeah.
There's so many things in here that like I like better in Exalted the Fairfolk, but it's I think it was inspired by this somehow. But yeah, there's so many things in here. I'm like, Exalted the Fairfolk actually has a lot of things that mechanically work even better for the Denizens than they do for Kithain.
Well, we'll get to it. We'll get to that one.
But it's just, I'm glad it exists, but I could have liked it so much more.
Like, honestly, I didn't think I would like it as much as I did on this read-through. It was one of the first Changeling books that I ever bought, because it came out not long after I started playing, so it was like the new one. And I read it at the time. I've flipped through it since then. I've used it a couple times, but it didn't stick in my head as like actually one of the books that I would probably like more than most of the others for that reason.
This came out while I was, I think, just as I went away to university. And I'd sort of left behind, like, the LARP that I'd been plating for a few years had ended and things like that. So it was, I brought it, I'm like, oh, this will be amazing. And then like started actually talking to people online with it, and then I tried to use it in a game a few years later, and I'm like, oh, this is hard.
Did the adhene ever actually make it into Shining Host?
The Shining Host Player's Guide? I would have to go look.
Well, we'll get there too.
Yep.
So we have 3 questions. Louis Armander asks, how would you update the Fear Bolg for C20? Well, they are in C20, but as the discussion on the Discord talked about, I think we need mechanics for the Fearcless to really make their birthright sing, if that makes sense. Plus, there's the part that they can essentially call on the weird to have it happen in the real world. I would bring that back if they're going to have the 1 birthright, 2 frailties again. If it is kept dreaming only, I would cut the hunger piece. And give them
if you want an entire deep mechanical subsystem, we will be looking at that when we get to Exalted the Fair Focus ideas.
Yeah. Something about the Fear Bolg with their frailty where they need sacrifices to get glamour, that opens up the door for all kinds of like Fear Bolg cult on Earth that the Kithain have to shut down stories.
Oh yeah, I love that. Having that with the feeding restriction though feels a little bit over the top. Like, it's like both are fine, but they don't need to be in the same kith necessarily. But
I mean, it's the kind of thing where you've got like a red cap and a slua and a satyr investigating some weird glamour goings on, and they kick down a door, and there they find this 8-foot-tall antlered warlord who's telling his followers, like, I can only answer your prayers if you bring me steakums. So,
sorry, what? Bring what?
Steakums. It's a brand of frozen meat.
Oh.
South of the border, that's what we eat.
Oh, okay.
Actually, sorry, I should have asked, what would you do to the Fear Bolg?
No, that's pretty close. Yeah, I'd need to nail down. I agree with you on the birthright. It's just making it work without it being an entire chapter full of mechanical subsystem kits.
Yeah. If we already had solid mechanics for it, it would be so much easier to assess. But we don't.
Yeah.
So.
I love them though. I like so many of these kith. Like,
yeah,
the Akari, they're just 2 one-note villain, but the rest of them I like.
So then Count Clockwise asks, how would you approach the Autumn Way art in C20? Like I said, I think it could be largely kept the same as an art for Sentient Chimera. So if they don't have the weird read and they want to visit, like, they could use that. I might replace a couple powers, like I might have opening a Trod be one of them, or like creating a dreaming shallowing instead of the reality's horror one.
Mm-hmm. And it's very, you'd have to update it like you would any other art that didn't make it into C20. But
possible future Storyteller's Vault project.
Yep. It would still be useful for the Denizens, wouldn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
A mannequin with it.
Yeah, that'd be handy. Luna Andromeda Vebe asks, what is the best type of denizen and why is it the Karamet?
I'm torn between loving the Moray, the Karamet, and the Firbog. And if you ask me like a different, I keep flipping between which ones are my favorite. I like all of them really. Even the they said the Curious kind of one note, but like I'd use them as villains for sure. So it's
for me, I think it's the Aunids, the Fua, and the Firbolg for me. Like that's the I can't decide. I don't really care for the Karamet, I'll be honest. And maybe it's because I'm not a Wraith player. But I think part of it is because they open up more questions than they answer that aren't resolved in the book. Like,
that's
what exactly is the process for how they become Karamet? What exactly are they supposed to be doing? Is it different for all of them? I don't know. But it opens up a lot of story hooks about mortals and fae, about fae and wraiths.
Actually, now that I think about it, though, like Karamet and Moray do have the problem that I'm less sure how to make them PCs because they're so mission based in their own mission. It's like how would
yeah. I don't think I'd want to play one, but they would make good storyteller characters.
Yeah.
So if I can have Kermit the Frog as a Karamet, I would go with that.
Kermit the Karamet.
Karamet the Frog. So, is that enough to say about the Dark again?
For now,
yes. Take us out, Josh.
Yeah. So you can find us at changelingthepodcast.com. You can send us an email, podcast@changelingthepodcast.com. You can send us a toot, changelingpod@dice.camp. Follow our Facebook page, which is starting getting a lot more people talking and comments and stuff on it. Changeling the Podcast. You can join our Discord server, which is also getting way more people talking on it. No, that's
discord.me/CTP.
There we go. Yeah. And all the links will be in our show notes.
As always.
Once again, I'm Josh.
My Aria is currently in Puka.
Dang it!
Oh, sorry.
That's fine.
We've done some research and uncovered the identities of the other 6 courts of the Fomorians that will wake in tandem with the remaining pieces of the key to the Triumph Cask of Sorrows being found. First, the diabolical Black Court will awaken at the beginning of Evernight. The Yellow Court rises in madness when the 4th wall of the game is terminally broken. Their 2 counterparts, the mysterious Cyan Court and the alien Magenta Court, will make their appearance when all Storyteller Vault supplements are available for print on demand. The citrically refreshing Octarine Court is roused by puns and satire, and at last, when the key is complete and the apocalyptic cask opened, the Golden Court will come together to remind us that Arcadia is just the friends we made among the Fae. Of course, this vision of a Fomorian-dominated future is perhaps a bit too optimistic, but we'll continue soothsaying out the possibilities with support from listeners like you, and in particular, our patrons, Derek, Dorcatus, Oreo, Roz Caboose, Sandjigger, Sija, Terry Robinson, and Tricerabeth. If you sign up at www.patreon.com/changelingthepodcast, you too can receive sweet bennies, including a shout-out like that at the end of each episode. Please also consider leaving us a review on the podcast listening platform of your greatest convenience, or telling your possessed sleepwalking friends and allies about our show. Remember to always wear red and never try to outshine your jealous muse. Until next time, keep on dreaming.